Hello and welcome to this game review. So your question was, is this good analysis and what can we do to make our analysis better? And the answer is simply, if you had learned something from your analysis, then this means that an analysis is good. If you did not learn anything, this means that something is wrong and you should analyze in a way that you can learn something. For this, taking some kind of conclusions at the end is good. So we will see. So it started as some English opening. Black developed the pieces b4, bishop b6, and here this bishop is quite safe. If needed, we will play a6 or a5, and black has some space in the center, white has space in the center, I mean on the queen side, so he is quite fine as well. a5 is a nice move. Now we have gained access to this square on c5, and maybe this pawn will be a little bit overextended and we can try to create a weakness. Okay, knight c3, c6. This is a nice move, and usually it prepares d5, queen c2, and now d5 is played, which is a very good move. Now black has two pawns in the center, but very strangely, black here recaptures with the knight, which is hard to understand because the point of putting the pawn on c6 was to recapture with the pawn, and now we have two pawns in the center. So instead you played knight f takes d5. You mentioned this is a mistake because you gave up a pawn, but it's not only a mistake because of giving up a pawn, but just positionally, why not take with the pawn and have the perfect center? And here as well, we have to learn something. We not have to just see that we gave up a pawn, right? Of course, we know that giving up a pawn is bad, but we have to think about the future and think about what can we do in the future to not give up a pawn in such a way. So the problem is that this bishop will make a discovered attack on the pawn on e5. So how can we avoid this? Well, you calculate what happens after knight takes d5, because this is the most obvious capture in the position, and this variation that happened in the game could have been seen, as this is all captures. And so before making a move, we should always think about the opponent's forcing moves. And here turns out that this is impossible, because after this, b takes c6, but even here, bishop takes e5 is also possible, but this is more accurate. We can't even take back, because now we're losing more pawns. So now we are forced to castle. After bishop e5, we're actually two pawns down. And so white is kind of undeveloped, but our pieces are not in a very good position to make use of it. But okay, now black develops, and queen d6 is played. And here, usually we do not want to exchange queens when we are down material, right? But this loses a lot of time by white, which black can use to improve the pieces. So this is an exception. So generally, we should probably play queen g5 or something, rook f to d8. But here, taking is actually a good move. Rook f d8 is a good move, improving the rook, attacking the bishop. And here, rook a8. And yeah, here you mentioned this is a mistake, and f6 is better, according to Stockfish. So this is not really analysis, as we have not really learned anything. Like, what is putting a rook on an open file? Is this a bad idea? Should I not do this in the future? This will only make our chess worse, right? So we have to understand why f6 is such a good move. So we have to look at the variation. After f6, if the bishop moves to g5, to f4, I guess g5 traps the bishop, right? This is kind of simple. If it goes here, we can take, and now his structure is completely ruined, right? What else can he do? If he goes here, we are happily taking the bishop, and now we have created a weakness here. You can maybe go here, attack it, and black has also the bishop pair, maybe bishop a5 at some point, or attacking this pawn. Then black is also fine. So probably bishop b2 is the only important move here. And here black has to again find a nice move, rook a to b8. Why is this such a good move? Because it creates a threat of taking here, because the bishop on b2 is undefended. And here Stockfish recommends bishop c1, which is not very obvious. And after all this, we can see what happened to the position. We improved the pawn, as the king can come up. We improved the rook, the other rook as well, and white was forced to put his bishop on c1, which is of course not good for him. So why is f6 so good? because of this variation, where we are able to improve our pieces with tempo and with a threat of a discovered attack, which forces the bishop to move. So we do not learn anything from seeing that this is not a good move. This is simply a missed opportunity to develop a bit more quickly with f6, which is also a forcing move. Rook a8, knight f3, rook c2, and here bishop c3 was played, which is a horrible move, as it not only gives up a pawn, but also gives black a bishop pair advantage, and also allows the rooks to attack the newly created weaknesses. So instead, of course, white is 2 pawns up, so he should just exchange pieces and enjoy the endgame with 2 pawns up, and also the open file, and basically no weaknesses. But after this, black has basically no problems, because now there is only a 1 pawn disadvantage, but that 1 pawn is compensated by the bishop pair, as this bishop is very strong and it can attack this pawn on a3. So this is why white's advantage is basically gone. Knight e5 is played, the bishop moves, and here bishop d5, attacking f7, but the opponent did not think about the hanging bishop, and now he starts giving up pieces, so he got very mad, probably. So to answer the question of is this good analysis, well, it depends on whether or not you learned anything. Because here, from this moment, if we just see that rook a8 is bad and f6 is good, what is the conclusion? So what can we do in the future? Should we never put the rook on open files? Well, of course not. The rooks belong on open files. But here specifically, f6 should have been played, because this bishop cannot go anywhere safely. It will always be taken except b2. But this is an undefended square, and we can continue developing our pieces with tempo, because this creates a threat of taking. For example, after this, we can take, and we have won a pawn, and our rook is on the second rank. And also in the opening, well, you mentioned this is a mistake because you gave up a pawn, but it's not only a mistake because you gave up a pawn, right? You missed the chance to create a big center like this. And also, what is the conclusion of this? Do we never want to give up pawns? Well, of course, we know that giving up pawns is bad, but how can we do something in the future so we do not blunder like this anymore? Well, maybe consider the opponent's forcing move before making the move. Imagine that you have made the move. Think about the opponent's forcing moves. Taking a knight is one of them. There it turns out the pawn on e5 is undefended. So to have good analysis, we need good conclusions. What to do in the future so that these mistakes do not repeat themselves.